The text arrived while I was standing behind the counter of my boutique halfway through helping a customer choose between two silk scarves. It lit up my phone screen with brutal clarity. I'm leaving you and moving to Miami with my 20-year-old girlfriend. I've already emptied our joint account. Haha. I read it twice, almost in disbelief, but my hands did not shake. My voice did not waver as I rang up Mrs. Peterson's purchase, folded the scarf in silver wrapping, and smiled as if nothing in my world had just split wide open. Only the tightening around my eyes betrayed me. The woman I had been for 12 years, the loyal wife, the trusting partner, died quietly in that moment behind a cash register beneath the warm glow of boutique lighting. My name is Claire Harrison. I'm 38 years old. And in that one text message, my husband Mark thought he had ended my life as I knew it. What he didn't know was that the life he imagined I couldn't live without him had already been reshaped in silence, carefully, patiently, while he was too distracted chasing youth to notice. When Mrs. Peterson left, the door chime tinkling softly behind her, I typed out my only reply. Good luck. I locked up early that evening. My boutique, my so-called little shop, as Mark loved to belittle it, was not just my pride, but my fortress. He thought it was a hobby. He thought I played at business, while he carried the weight of our marriage with his middling corporate job. The truth was that my boutique's profits had quietly surpassed his salary years ago, and I had carefully kept those accounts separate, guarded like the crown jewels. I knew about Melissa long before he admitted it in that smug text. The young receptionist at his office, the girl who laughed too loudly at his jokes during the company Christmas party, the one who touched his arm when she thought no one was looking. I had seen her, noted her youth, her naivety, and tucked that knowledge away. The lipstick on his shirts, the late nights at work, the sudden obsession with the gym, it wasn't subtle. Mark was many things, but subtle was not one of them. 3 months ago, I had found the first receipt for an expensive dinner for two. That was the day I opened a new bank account at a separate bank, quietly moving my personal savings into it. When Mark suggested combining our finances for simplicity, I smiled sweetly and agreed. He never noticed that I left just enough in the joint account to keep him comfortable, to keep him blind. So when he drained it thinking he had stripped me bare, all he had really taken was 2 months' worth of deposits, pocket change compared to what I had secured. I went home to the house my grandmother had left me, the house Mark had begged me to add his name to 12 times. For tax reasons, he'd claimed. For security. But something in me had always resisted. I had kept it in my name alone. That instinct had saved me. As I poured a glass of wine and spread the documents across the dining table, I allowed myself one laugh. Mark, in his 45 years of wisdom, had thought he was clever, thought he had outplayed me. But his betrayal had been sloppy, his arrogance blinding. He believed my love for him meant blindness. He believed my devotion meant weakness. He believed wrong, because while he was busy booking flights to Miami with his 2 young mistress, I had already been consulting my lawyer. I had already gathered months of evidence, every hotel receipt, every suspicious charge, every text where he grew careless and cruel. And now with that one smug text message, he had handed me his confession on a silver platter. The phone buzzed again. Another message from Mark. Don't bother begging. Melissa and I leave tomorrow. I'll send for my things later. Begging. He thought I'd beg. I took another sip of wine, opened my evidence folder on the laptop and dragged his messages into it. Screenshots filed neatly by date. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to watch. Watch as his castle of sand crumbled under the weight of truth. And for the first time in years, I felt something I had almost forgotten: control. The next morning, the sun filtered softly through the lace curtains of my bedroom. I lay awake for a long time, staring at the ceiling, not because I was lost, but because I was calculating. There was a time when I would have dissolved in tears, clutching my pillow, asking myself what I had done wrong. But that woman, the one who begged for scraps of affection, who forgave endless excuses, she no longer existed. Instead, I rose, showered and dressed with precision, slipping into a tailored navy dress that made me feel strong. Today wasn't about mourning. Today was about moving pieces on a board only I understood. By the time I sat down with my coffee, the texts had already started again. I know this must be hard for you. You're not getting any younger after all. At least you have your little shop to keep you busy. I stared at his words and almost felt pity. Almost. He thought he had delivered a death blow. He didn't realize he had armed me with his own admissions. Every text was evidence, every condescending jab another nail in his coffin. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded the messages to my lawyer. She answered within minutes. Excellent. Each one strengthens our case. I'll move forward with the filing. Mark thought I was in pieces. In truth, I was constructing a fortress. Later that day, the phone rang. His mother's voice, Barbara, floated through the receiver laced with false sympathy. Claire. Dear Mark told us everything. How controlling you've been. How you drove him away. And now you're being vindictive, causing problems with his travel plans. I put her on speaker while arranging handbags in the boutique's window display. Barbara, did he mention that he emptied our joint account? That he booked 2 first-class tickets and a hotel with our credit card? Silence. I continued, my tone calm but firm. Did he also mention that I have every one of his texts saved, including the one where he mocked my age or bragged about taking our money? Another pause, then softly, he did seem a bit cruel. I told him that text was inappropriate. Inappropriate. That was the word she chose for betrayal, for theft, for cruelty. I appreciate the call, I said, my patience thinning. But my lawyer has advised minimal contact with Mark's family during the proceedings. Goodbye, Barbara. I ended the call and exhaled. I knew where her loyalties lay, for now. But loyalty has a way of shifting when truth comes crashing down. That evening, as I poured myself another glass of wine, I allowed a smile to creep across my lips. I had reported the credit card charges earlier that day. By now, the airline had canceled their tickets. The hotel reservation in Miami was gone. While Mark gloated, imagining a glamorous escape, he and his 20-year-old conquest were about to discover that their dream vacation had evaporated. The following morning brought the first wave of his fury. What did you do to our card? The airline won't honor our tickets. The hotel canceled our reservation. Answer me. I placed my phone face down on the counter and let it buzz until the vibration ceased. I had no intention of answering. His panic was a symphony and I intended to let it play out. By noon, his sister Amanda was already whispering through mutual friends. The gossip came back to me like clockwork. Mark and Melissa stranded near the airport, sulking in a dingy motel after their Miami dreams had crumbled. His credit cards maxed out, his charm wearing thin, his fantasy collapsing one missed reservation at a time. And still the texts kept coming. You think you're so smart, but I made copies of all the boutique's records. Half that business is mine. I laughed, a genuine, full-bodied laugh that startled even me. The boutique was incorporated solely in my name, funded exclusively by me long before our marriage. His threats were nothing more than smoke easily scattered by the wind of documentation. I forwarded that text to my lawyer as well. She responded quickly. He's digging his own grave. Keep everything. We'll present it. That night I sat at my dining table again, spreading documents into neat piles. Bank statements, property deeds, incorporation papers. My meticulous record-keeping, the very habit he had mocked as obsessive, was now my greatest weapon. For the first time in years, I felt not like his wife, not like his victim, but like a strategist. He thought he had blindsided me, but really he had walked directly into a trap I had set with patience and precision. And as I drifted off to sleep that night, my phone silent, at last I knew this was only the beginning. Monday arrived with a gray sky and a fine drizzle, the kind of weather that seems to mirror the heaviness in your chest. I stood outside the courthouse, the click of my heels steady against the marble steps. Beside me, my lawyer carried a thick folder, months of evidence bound together with neat precision. Inside those pages was my story, my protection, my revenge. Mark arrived late, swaggering in with Melissa trailing behind him. He wore jeans that clung too tightly to his softening frame, and a blazer that screamed of desperation. Melissa, poor thing, tried to look sophisticated, but under the harsh courthouse lighting, her youth looked more like fragility. When we entered the courtroom, the judge wasted no time. She was a sharp-eyed woman with a no-nonsense tone that cut through the air like a blade. Mr. Harrison, she began, you admitted via text message to emptying a joint account and using shared credit cards for a personal trip. Do you deny this? Mark shifted in his chair, attempting a smirk that didn't quite reach his eyes. I was just trying to make a clean break. The judge arched an eyebrow. By committing financial fraud, a murmur of suppressed laughter rippled through the courtroom. Mark's lawyer scrambled, fumbling papers. Your Honor, my client may have made some rash decisions, but Mrs. Harrison's actions have been vindictive and calculating. Calculating, my lawyer cut in smoothly. You mean prudent? My client protected her separate assets, maintained meticulous records, and followed the law. That isn't vindictive, that's intelligent. The judge leaned forward, scanning the documentation. Property deeds in my name only. Incorporation papers for the boutique filed years before the marriage. Bank statements showing clear separation of personal and joint finances. Every accusation Mark's side attempted to throw at me fell flat against the wall of evidence I had built brick by brick. Finally, the judge spoke. This court finds sufficient evidence of financial misconduct. All shared assets are frozen pending dissolution. Mr. Harrison is ordered to return funds removed from the joint account within 24 hours. Mark's face flushed crimson. But that money's gone, we spent it. Then I suggest you find a way to replace it, the judge said coldly, cutting him off. I watched him deflate, his bravado collapsing like a house of cards. Melissa looked down at her lap, her cheeks burning with humiliation. The glamorous escape he had promised her had already disintegrated into cheap motels and courtroom shame. As we left, Mark tried to catch my arm. Claire, please, we can work something out. 20 years together has to mean something. I pulled my arm back, my voice low but sharp. It did mean something. Until you decided it didn't. He swallowed hard, searching my face for weakness. But there was none left to find. Outside the courthouse, the drizzle had turned to steady rain. Melissa hovered nearby, her eyes darting between us. For a moment I almost pitied her, caught in his web, believing she was different, special. But pity quickly evaporated when she spoke. You didn't have to ruin him like this, she said softly, almost accusing. I turned to her, my tone calm but edged with steel. He ruined himself. I just made sure he couldn't ruin me too. Her lips parted as if to argue, but she said nothing more. She followed him, her heels clicking quickly like she was trying to escape the weight of the truth. That evening, I sat in my boutique, the rain tapping gently against the windows. The store was busy. Friday evenings always were, but as I watched women browse, I realized something profound. Many of them knew. Gossip travels fast, and whispers of Mark's betrayal had already circled the community. Yet instead of pity, I saw solidarity in their eyes. Some came to show support, some to shop, some just to stand with me. My little shop had become something bigger. A symbol, a fortress, a reminder that women are stronger than the men who underestimate them. Later that night my phone buzzed again. Mark's messages swung wildly between fury and pleading. You've destroyed everything, you'll regret this. Can't we just talk? That business would be nothing without my support? I read each one, screenshot them, and forwarded them to my lawyer without replying. His words no longer had power over me. They were just more rope for him to hang himself with. Lying in bed, I thought back to that first text message, the one meant to break me. Instead, it had set me free. Mark believed he had written the ending of my story. What he never realized was that it was only the beginning. The weeks after that first court hearing were some of the strangest of my life. It was as though I were living in two worlds at once. In one, I was still the woman with a boutique to run shipments, to unpack displays, to arrange. Life went on in colors and textures, women laughing softly as they tried on dresses, little girls tugging at their mother's sleeves. In the other world, I was a strategist watching a man unravel in slow motion, each thread tugged loose by his own arrogance. The gossip spread faster than I ever expected. Our small town thrived on whispers, and soon enough, everyone knew the story: how Mark had abandoned his wife by text, how he had drained our account, how he had been caught with a girl half his age. People love a scandal. But what surprised me most was how many women came into my shop specifically to stand with me. You're stronger than I could ever be. One woman told me as she bought a handbag she admitted she didn't really need. Another said quietly, my ex tried the same thing. He thought he could strip me of everything. Men like that never expect us to be smarter. Each word, each glance of support, stitched something back together inside me. The betrayal had cracked me open, but the community's solidarity began to fill those cracks with steel. Meanwhile, Mark's texts kept coming, swinging from rage to desperation. You'll regret this. You've ruined everything. Can't we just work it out? I never meant to hurt you. I forwarded each one to my lawyer. They became more evidence, more proof of his instability. Then came the phone calls from his family. Amanda, his sister, called first. Her voice carried a mixture of embarrassment and resignation. Claire, I owe you an apology. We believed him when he said you'd been cold, controlling, that you pushed him away. But then we saw his texts, the ones where he bragged about taking your money. That's not the brother I thought I knew. I listened in silence. Apologies from those who had chosen his side too easily didn't soothe me. They came too late, after the damage had already been done. Still, a part of me appreciated her honesty. A few days later, Barbara called again. This time her voice trembled. He said awful things about your age, about replacing you with someone younger. I raised him better than that. Or at least I thought I did. There was sorrow in her tone, the kind of sorrow that comes when a parent realizes her child is no longer the person she hoped he'd become. I appreciate your concern, I said gently but firmly. But this isn't something you can fix for him. And it wasn't. No one could save Mark from himself. The final straw came when Amanda confided through a mutual friend that Mark and Melissa were living in her cramped studio apartment. The Miami dream was gone. His credit cards had been maxed out for months. The money he drained had been frozen by the court. His fancy clothes had been returned to repay what little he could. And Melissa, she was beginning to show cracks. I heard through whispers that the age gap, which once felt like a thrill, now felt like an anchor. The glamour of secret dinners and hotel rooms had turned into the suffocating reality of bills and arguments. On social media, she began posting cryptic messages about toxic relationships and lessons learned. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered how she touched his arm at the Christmas party, how she laughed too loudly at his jokes while I stood only a few feet away. She had made her choice just as he had. The boutique, meanwhile, thrived. Local women rallied behind me, some shopping more than they needed, others simply stopping by to check on me, to stand in solidarity. Ironically, Mark's betrayal had boosted my business. The little shop he had mocked had become the centerpiece of my resilience. One evening as I closed up the store, my lawyer called. He's getting desperate, she said. He tried claiming the boutique was his idea, that he invested money in it. But your records dismantle every word. I let out a breath of laughter. Of course he did. She hesitated, then added. His girlfriend's posts are proving useful too. Screenshots of their trip planning, the photos of him flashing cash, those will help establish financial misconduct. I hung up and sat quietly for a while, the hum of the boutique's lights filling the silence. Mark was unraveling piece by piece. The man who had once strutted through life so certain of his power was now clinging to lies that dissolved the moment they were touched. I thought back to his first text, haha. That little laugh he had tossed into his cruelty. It was meant to mock me, to belittle me, to cement my humiliation. Now it only reminded me of how shallow his triumph had been, how quickly it had turned to ashes. And for the first time I realized that my revenge wasn't in watching him suffer. My revenge was in standing tall, in surviving, in succeeding where he thought I would collapse. The final divorce hearing was scheduled 3 months later, and by that time the transformation in both our lives was undeniable. Mark walked into the courtroom a shell of the man who had once texted me with smug cruelty. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by his old suits that no longer fit quite right. His hair had thinned noticeably, his face sagged with exhaustion. Melissa was nowhere in sight. Rumor had it she'd left him weeks earlier, unable to carry the weight of his debts and despair. I, on the other hand, walked in wearing a tailored black dress and a calm smile. I wasn't flaunting, but I wasn't hiding either. I was there to finish what he had started on my terms. His lawyer looked weary, flipping through papers as if hoping something new might magically appear. But there was nothing left to find. My records told the entire story: my boutique established before the marriage, my grandmother's house deeded solely in my name, my careful separation of finances. Every taunt, every ha-ha in his texts had become ironclad proof of his betrayal. When the judge delivered the final ruling, her tone was firm and decisive. Mrs. Harrison retains full ownership of her business and inherited property. Mr. Harrison is ordered to repay funds withdrawn from the joint account. Shared assets are divided equitably, but given Mr. Harrison's misconduct, the court finds in favor of Mrs. Harrison on all contested matters. Mark sagged into his chair, his shoulders collapsing as though the words themselves had weight. His face twisted with bitterness, and as we walked out of the courtroom he hissed under his breath, "You've destroyed me. I'll have to move back in with my parents." I paused, looking him directly in the eye. "No, Mark. You destroyed yourself. I just made sure you couldn't destroy me too." His mother was waiting outside, clutching her purse tightly. When she saw him, her expression crumpled. She put an arm around him, guiding him toward her car. For a moment I almost felt the echo of compassion. Almost. But then I remembered his words, how he had mocked my age, my business, my worth. Compassion was a luxury he had never extended to me, and so I turned away, my heels clicking confidently across the marble floor, heading back to the business he had once dismissed as a little shop. The months that followed were filled with growth, not just for my boutique, but for me. The gossip that had once threatened to humiliate me had instead fueled solidarity. Women I'd never met before came into the store buying scarves or handbags they didn't need, telling me quietly, "We're rooting for you." Some confided their own stories, husbands who had betrayed them, families who had doubted them. And in each exchange, I felt the power of survival, the shared strength of women who refused to be broken. My boutique expanded. I hired more staff, opened a second location, and launched an online store that drew customers from across the country. What Mark had mocked as a hobby had become a thriving enterprise. Each success was a reminder that the best revenge isn't cruelty, it's resilience. Through mutual acquaintances, I heard bits about Mark. He had moved back into his childhood bedroom. His once prized car repossessed, his reputation at work tarnished beyond repair. His midlife crisis had stripped him of everything he thought he controlled. The younger women he once chased now avoided him. Women his own age knew better. The man who had tried to reduce me to nothing had reduced himself instead. 1 year after the divorce, I stood in my new store at the grand opening. Cameras flashed, journalists scribbled notes, and customers flooded through the doors. They weren't here to hear about my failed marriage. They were here to celebrate my success. My betrayal had become a footnote. My resilience was the headline. And yet as I stood there, champagne in hand, I thought back to that text message, the one meant to devastate me. Haha. I could still see it, still hear the casual cruelty in it. But now, instead of pain, it made me smile, because it reminded me of how far I had come. Mark thought he had ended my story with a single message. What he never understood was that he had given me the beginning of a better one. If you've stayed with me through this journey, thank you. Betrayal may break us, but it doesn't define us. What defines us is what we build in its place: strength, independence, a future brighter than the past we leave behind. So if my story has touched you, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more. And most importantly, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your own stories, your strength, your survival. Together we remind the world that no one can take away what we refuse to surrender.